Good evening, everybody. It is just almost 7 o'clock. I'm just getting this started a few minutes early, just in case we were running into any problems. And so if you're watching this right now, we're going to take just about 2.5 minutes, and then we will get started. So if you're watching this later, after the live stream's ended, go ahead and just skip ahead about 2 minutes now. Let's see here. About 2 minutes and 15 seconds from right now, we will get going with our class and some announcements. So you have a couple minutes here while we welcome some more people to come on in. I do hope everyone's having an enjoyable Wednesday. It is a little bit breezy out there. However, the temperatures are pretty nice. Haven't quite made it up to 80 degrees today, so we're getting a little bit cooler weather than what we have had in the last couple of days, and more than what we're going to be having as well, it seems. I saw temperatures near that 100-degree mark coming up. I think on getting close there on Thursday and maybe even surpassing it on Friday. So it's going to be warm out there. Drink lots of water. I'm now getting to do my dream of being a meteorologist, give you all the weather report here. That's actually what I wanted to do whenever I was growing up, but decided to change that up, obviously. As we do get going here in just a second, there were a lot of different things that have been going on recently with many of our members and members' families. I do want to again express our condolences to the Hughes family at the loss of Mother Hope, who had passed away last week, and just want to keep all of them in your prayers. And also, yesterday, Don Webb had his surgery down in Dallas. I'm told everything went well with the surgery, that he's going to have to be on liquid diet for a little while, but then he'll start being able to do soft foods. We'll have to go back and forth somewhat into Dallas from here. And then Tim today had his heart bypass surgery. And we're told that everything went through as great as can go on a surgery of that kind of a nature. And obviously he's going to have quite a road of recovery ahead, and probably at least 10 days in the hospital while he recovers from all this. So do keep Don and Tim all in your prayers throughout everything. Also heard Nancy Fleener is doing a lot better. Have had some members that have been going over, checking on her, getting everything done. And I think Richard posted just right before we got started that John Linen's going to be having his procedure done in the morning early. And so do remember that in your prayers as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our little Bible class today. And I'm kind of happy with how this one is going to go, at least how I believe it's going to go. And we have been talking about what I've listed down as my favorite Bible stories, kind of going back through, a lot of them coming back from my youth, remembering the stories I used to like to read over and over, or listen to, or watch different videos on over and over again. And so we're continuing that on this Wednesday. The day the Bible story, well, if you're looking at that right there, you're probably thinking to yourself, I don't remember ever seeing that before. There is nothing in your Bible called the Tale of Flibberoloo, but there was a VeggieTales tale of Flibberoloo. And as we get going with this very kind of a poem here, I hope that you will start to see what Bible story it is that this parallels with, because it does definitely follow a Bible story. So let me get my things adjusted here so I can go ahead and begin telling you the tale of Flibberoloo. The sun always shone on the mountains of Fibble. The wind and the rain never came. To call the place beautiful, no one would quibble, though hard on the feet, they'd explain. But high in those hills, past the rocks and the rubble, so high that the clouds were below, were two tiny towns that were nothing but trouble. As you listen, you'll see that it's so. From the town to the west that thought it was best bore the name of Flibberoloo, where the women and men since 1710 have worn on their heads one large shoe. Now in town number 2, one big shoe wouldn't do, so the people of Gibberty Lot would look down and below at shoe-headed fellows and place on their own head a pot. For days without end, these two neighbors would bicker as to whose headgear was best, and the shoes and the pots would fly ever thicker from morning to night without rest. But not all the people who lived in these cities were angry and bitter and vile. A few would write poems and sing happy ditties and greet all their friends with a smile. One Flibbian fellow who hated a fight tried hard not to act like a monster. While pots crashed around him from morning to night, he'd just play with his pet wind-up lobster. They kept to themselves, and they'd talk, till one day he said, "Hey, let's go for a walk. I'm tired of laying around like a squid. I want to get out there." So that's what he did. The shoe-headed boy and his blue plastic friend walked out of the town and began to descend to the dark rocky valley between the two cities, away from his friends and their light-hearted ditties. "Hey, this is swell," he said. "Gosh, this is fun. It's great that my lobster can get out and run." But neither the toy nor the boy with the shoe could see the disaster about to ensue. For up in the rocks, hidden just out of sight, were 6 beady eyes filled with anger and spite. 6 beady eyes watched our hero meander, 2 shifty crooks and their ruthless commander. "Oh, look what good fortune," the nasty one said. "Here comes a poor fool with a shoe on his head. I bet he's got money, I bet he's got gold, or maybe some jewelry he'd like us to hold. Whatever the booty, I think I could stand it, and that's what I live for, that's why I'm a bandit." And then they attacked him from under their rock. First they knocked off his shoe, then they knocked off his sock. But the thing they did next was extremely unfunny. They shook him so hard that he dropped his milk money. "Hey," he protested, "I don't like your ilk. How will I go strong if I don't drink my milk?" But they didn't care. They'd accomplished their goal. So they put our friend down, stuck his head in a hole, and walked off with his money, every last nickel, then yelled back as they left, "See you around, silly pickle." Then he said with a moan, "Well, I guess I'm alone." But this was a loneliness he'd never known. His friends were far off and his lobster was missing. The sound he could hear was just the wind hissing. Things looked pretty grim for our Flibbian buddy, his head in the hole and his shoe bent and muddy. But then, were those footsteps? Oh, could it be true? Along came the mayor of Flibberoloo. If anyone, surely he'd help the poor soul. "Hello," said the boy with his head in the hole. "I seem to have fallen, I seem to be stuck, but now that you're here, well, I guess I'm in luck." "Oh dear," said the mayor, observing the shoe, "a fellow in need, and he's Flibbian too. Young man, I have noticed your dire situation, and please rest assured that I share your frustration. But how can I put this? Oh, what shall I say? Maybe you'll understand it better this way. I'm busy, much, much too busy. You've no idea now what I've got to do. I'm busy, dreadfully busy. I have no more time for you." As soon as the mayor had finished this song, a Flibbian doctor came strolling along. "Out of my way," she said, starting to slide. "If you and your pickle would please step aside. I'm very important. I can't stand and chat." "Why, that's not my pickle. I found him like that." Besides, it just happens I'm noteworthy too. Why, I am the mayor of Flibberoloo." "I see," said the doctor. "Then you understand that without an appointment I can't lend a hand. There are folks with bronchitis, there are kids with the flu," she said to the mayor of Flibberoloo. "If I'm not mistaken, you're quite busy too." Well, they talked about schedules, compared daily planners, until finally a voice said, "Please pardon my manners. I don't mean to bug you. I see that you're busy, but being inverted has made me quite dizzy." The two other Philippians paused for a while, then looked at each other and said with a smile, "We're busy, busy, much, much too busy. You've no idea now what we have to do. We're busy, busy, dreadfully busy, much, much too busy for you." Oh, it was just dreadful. How could they desert their Philippian friend with his head in the dirt? "That's it then, I'm finished. I'll die here down under. If they would not help me, then who would?" he wondered. But wait, someone else on the road overhead. Would they help a friend beaten up, left for dead? Oh, look, on his head not a shoe but a pot. Why, this little fellow's from Gibberty Lot. Would he help a Philippian? Certainly not. The boy with the pot saw our friend with the shoe. "Oh, look," he exclaimed, "he's from Flibberoloo. Why, they think we're garbage. They pelt us with shoes. Why should I care if he's been beaten and bruised? But out here in the wild, his chances are slim. If I was in need, would I want help from him?" He looked at our friend, and he looked at the shoe, and in his heart, he knew what to do. He may be Philippian, that's plain to see, but God made him special, just like he made me. So he got him unstuck, and he picked up his shoe, and together they walked back to Flibberoloo, out of the valley and back into town, where he stayed by his side till the doctor was found. "Oh my," said the doctor, "he's wearing a pot. The little one there is from Gibberty Lot. You saved this fellow? You pulled him through it? I don't understand. Tell me, why did you do it?" "He has a shoe and I have a pot. But when we look deeper, there's more that we've got. God made us special, and now that I see, if you're special to him, then you're special to me." So the boy with the pot gave the doctor some money to pay for the cucumber's bill, and the mayor cried out with his eyes moist and ruddy, "I'm touched by his act of goodwill. If this little guy can take care of his brother when he lives in one town and he in the other, why can't we all try to help one another, and love will surround our fair hill?" Now if you visit the mountains of Fibble, you won't see a shoe or a pot. Instead, they throw flowers and candy to nibble. I bet that you'd like it a lot. Now, I really hope that as you were listening to that you may have picked up on what it is that we're going to be looking at tonight in our story. Story of a man who is going between two towns, beaten up and left, and has different people that pass by, never helping him, until the person that you least expect finally does show up. If you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Luke chapter 10, verse 30 through 36. A man had just asked Jesus who his neighbor is. Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, 'Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back.' Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers?" We tell this story so many times, and we usually do treat it as though it is simply a child's story. We tell it in our Bible classes very regularly. Every single age we seem to tell it. We tell it even in KFC whenever we're able to have that with our little kids' church program here. But as much as it does apply for children, it applies for us. And the first thing that should lead us to realize that this is a lesson that I, as an adult, needs to hear is the fact that it is an adult that asks the question to Jesus, and Jesus is telling the story for the first time ever. Jesus is making up this parable, not for little kids, not to entertain people, but to prove a point. And it's a parable that's told to a grown man, a very grown, knowledgeable man. And in it, you could just imagine how this would be. When I was in college, I had to do the musical. And not actually singing or acting in it, but I was down in the pit. And by the way, when you're in the orchestral pit for a musical, trumpets don't usually get that much playing time. There's a whole lot of violins and woodwinds. Trumpets, we sit there sometimes and we just forget where we are and, oops, sorry, I missed that note. But we had this one show called The Mystery of Edwin Drood. And it was an old Charles Dickens novel that never got finished. And in this, it has this one line, this character that would often converse with the audience. And he would sit there, and we would call this today being meta. But he would talk to the audience back and forth and break that fourth wall. And whenever he would introduce a character, sometimes that character was a villain. And he would say, I don't know about you, but when we see a villain here, we hiss and boo. And he would encourage the audience to hiss and boo at these villains that would come on screen. And that's what I think of every time I read through the parable of the Good Samaritan, is whenever the Samaritan at the end comes on, whenever the priest comes on, whenever the Levite comes on, what kind of reaction would there be from the crowd? And I imagine that at first, whenever the priest walks by, there would be applause. Look at this man. He is such a good man. And then they might be scratching their heads for why he passed by on the other side. They would do the same thing when the next person comes by. And then maybe scratch their heads again. Why is this happening? And then he says, and then a Samaritan. And you could probably imagine that Jesus would pause for just a moment, allow them to boo, hiss, maybe even throw some cabbage at an imaginary Samaritan. But then it's the Samaritan that does the right thing. This was probably one of the first big twists in a story. We like watching movies with a twist at the end. You go, oh, I did not see that coming. Or a TV show that ends with a cliffhanger that you didn't see coming. And Jesus gives us this twist right here. This is a Samaritan. And to give you some background, why don't they like the Samaritans? Because whenever Israel, the 10 northern tribes, whenever they are captured by Assyria, they're not all carried into exile. They are just absolutely wiped out, dispersed. There is intermarrying going on between the kingdom of Israel and the Assyrians, and it is from that you have this region and these people from Samaria known as Samaritans. And so it's a reminder of these are the people that kind of had God's laws, but not really. And so they did not like them. They had all these different things. You even remember in John chapter 4, the woman at the well saying, well, you Jews say that you should worship in Jerusalem, but we say we worship on this mountain. And even Jesus says to her, you worship what you don't know. We worship what we do know. And so there's this thought process going on here that is ingrained in the mind of every Jewish person that Jesus was within earshot of, is that Samaritans don't know what they're doing. That Samaritans don't really know God. That Samaritans don't do what's right. And then he sits there and he says, here's what he did. He picked him up, put him on his own animal, took him into town, found a doctor, paid him some money, and said, give him what he needs. I'll be back with more money to give you. What would be the bare minimum that someone would have to do in this situation to be a good man? Well, maybe pull out the cell phone, call 911. Maybe wait for an ambulance to get there. Maybe take him into town. But I doubt we would sit there and say, let me pay for his treatment. Would we come back and check on him later? Would we say, if he needs more money, go ahead, put it on my bill? See, Jesus makes it very painfully clear that when this man comes by, it's not just about doing the bare minimum. Because he could have stopped the story with, and he helped him and took him into town, and everyone would be like, oh yeah, he was better than the priest. He was better than the Levite. But Jesus wanted to drive that point home of how much better and how much more Christ-like he acted than the other people who should have from the very beginning of this story. What does it mean to love your neighbor? What is involved with that? And then, of course, that question, who is my neighbor? And it ends there with Jesus saying, of those three people, who do you think was the better neighbor? Who do you think was the good man? Well, I suppose the one that helped him. I don't even want to say his name, but the one that helped him, he was probably that one. Jesus says, yeah, so go and do it. There are so many times when Jesus speaks that he sits there and he'll say things like on the Sermon on the Mount, you've heard it said this, but I tell you this. And he has this way of saying, here's what the culture says. He has this way of saying, here's what the law even says, but I'm going to tell you, you need to take it further. Whatever you think you have to do, you should be doing more. I remember a couple years ago, Gunnar had this habit of waking up very early. And it was at a time where he wasn't really able to turn the television on himself or get any breakfast on his own. And so whenever he got up, one of us had to get up. He'd get up early. And we'd sit there and go, Gunnar, you need to be sleeping in later. And then it finally dawned on us, he doesn't have a clock in his room. It's kind of dark during certain times of the year, and you really don't know what time is it. So when he got up, he just got up. So we put a clock in the room, and we set a time, and I don't remember what that time was that we set for him, but we said, you need to sleep until at least this time. Well, right after we did that, every day, boom, as soon as that time hit, he was up and out of bed. And we kind of figured that he's probably awake, and he's just sitting there staring at that clock like, waiting for the seconds to tick by. Is it there yet? Is it there yet? Is it? Yes, it's 7 o'clock. I can get out of this room. And that's what I think we often do with what is required. What is it to show love? Who is it that we show love to? That we sit there and we measure it down to, this is exactly what I have to do. I will go this far, but no farther. I'm going to watch that clock to see exactly how much time I have to spend. And when I think that time has passed, I'm gone. But with Jesus, it's never about doing the minimum. It's about taking it and just saying, do what you need to. The people that put in their monies and made a loud show of it weren't the ones that Jesus noticed. But the widow who put in barely anything at all, but it was all she had, was the one that he singled out. You have heard that it was said this, but I say to you, do this. Whatever it is, with Jesus, it's never about doing the minimum. It's about taking it and doing more. And as he says with this parable here, it doesn't matter who that person is. I'm sure every 4 years we could probably retell this story, and depending on what part of the country you're telling the story in, you could have it be a Republican that passes by and a Democrat that helps out. Or in other parts of the country, you could have it be a Democrat who passes by and a Republican that helps out. You could insert in so many things here that culture tells us these people are enemies. You could put in people there where it says maybe they're not enemies, but they just think differently than us. And they're not the ones that we would think of as being the good person here. But Jesus says none of that matters. And Paul will write, there's no Jew, there is no Gentile. Those things are gone. In this world, there are those who are lost but have found Jesus, and there are those who are lost and not found Jesus. And at one point, we are all the latter. There is no difference. It doesn't matter if you wear a shoe on your head or a pot. It doesn't matter what the issue is. What matters is that you know who your neighbor is and that you show your neighbor love. I don't know if you've ever seen these little cartoons that get posted online where it has Jesus sitting around this tree with a bunch of disciples sitting around, and he says something to the effect of, you should forgive someone when they sin against you. And then someone says, well, what if they really mess up? And then Jesus responds with, yes, even if they ask stupid questions. See, in Jesus' mind, it is very simple. Everyone is your neighbor. Everyone needs help. And everyone needs love. So no matter what it is, are you showing love in your life? Not just to those who are like you, who believe like you, but to everyone. Because Jesus says, everyone is our neighbor, and everyone deserves that love. Because as I loved you, you should love one another, no matter that difference. At this time, we're going on a little bit about around a month of stay-at-home orders. They're going to expire after tomorrow, and slowly things will be getting back to normal. And 4 weeks ago, everything on Facebook was joke memes. As time goes on, people start to get a little bit more bitter towards one another. You see claws come out. You see shots fired. Even when times are tough, even when people say things that may not make a lick of sense, and even when you are attacked, Luke 10 still applies. That's still your neighbor. Jesus still wants love. Not the minimum. It's how we live our life. I hope you all have a blessed rest of your week. I hope that you will be on Facebook tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock for the Overcoming Worry study. And then we will be back here on Sunday for worship at 9:45. And look on Facebook and YouTube around 7 on Friday night for another little kids' Bible study. I think you'll really enjoy it. But you guys have a blessed week, and we will see you soon.